when we get into this mode of sharing, we feel like we have to put on a performance that is not us. And so if anybody's waiting for permission to be themselves, like Dan and I'll grant you permission to be yourselves. Like if that's what you're waiting for, just be yourself, because that's what people want to know. And you've got a lot of experience and expertise and a point of view that's different than anybody else, right? And so just feel comfortable, try things out, just be an inspiration to somebody else, and your knowledge and experience can help somebody. You're best suited, I think Roy Vaden says it best, you're best suited to help the person you once were.
Welcome to Leadership Disrupted. When we started this podcast about a year and a half ago, someone I respect and trust told me it was likely doomed before we even started. I still have the Post-it note. In fact, I've got it right here. I pulled it out as I was preparing for this podcast today, where I wrote down his reasons that he felt the concept was doomed. Number one, no celebrity host. Number two, no political rants, no controversial hot takes. And then his last reason was not enough leadership nerds in the world to really care about such a thing. And so here we are, about a year and a half later, over 100 episodes under our belt, thousands of viewers and listeners on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Not millions, admittedly, but enough to make it feel like a worthwhile endeavor. And I think I've proven that there are, in fact, enough leadership nerds who are deeply committed to continuously growing, evolving, deepening their knowledge of all things leadership. So truly, I thank you. And if this is your first time, don't be afraid to like and subscribe, because AI controls our destiny. The algorithm pays attention to what you like and what you subscribe to, and then it lets others like you learn that we exist. Now, that's my oversimplified explanation. And to help us go deeper in our understanding of all things AI and digital marketing related, especially when it comes to business marketing, we have with us today Jimi Gibson. Jimi is the VP of Brand Communication for the Thrive Internet Marketing Agency, a full-service digital marketing agency. He's a Forbes and Entrepreneur contributor, a TEDx speaker, a keynote coach, and for more than 25 years, he's been helping cut through the noise with messaging that gets retrieved, cited, and trusted by both humans and machines. And especially in the age of artificial intelligence, we often have to first get noticed by AI before we even get a chance with our human customers. And so, Jimi, thank you. Welcome to Leadership Disrupted. It's great to have you here. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation, because I think I will learn a lot that I can apply, almost right away, letting the world know about the Leadership Disrupted podcast. So with that, could you maybe fill in the blanks for us? Tell us a little bit more about you and your background before we dive deep into our topic for the day, just to give us a sense of who you are.
Sure, Dan. Excited to be here and looking forward to our conversation. I'm going to take a little bit of a left turn that maybe you didn't expect, but I grew up fascinated with the world of magic and performance. And I was digging through some boxes a few years ago and found a membership card to Merlin's Mail Order Magic Club. And some quick math revealed that I was 4 years old when that happened. And I was like, wow, that's pretty young to be hooked on something like that. But what ended up happening was, in middle school, I was getting paid $25 a birthday party to do birthday party shows for my friends. Their parents were paying me to entertain my friends. And I'm like, hey, there's something here. And then in high school, I met a gentleman who was an account executive for a Fortune 100 company that was looking for promotional entertainers. And for the next 16 years, that's what I did. And I got to hang around the ad agency, and I got to learn about marketing and why was this company hiring me, and got to be in front of thousands of people to capture their attention, to keep them interested. And I thought, you know what, if there's any career that's similar to performing a magic show, it would be marketing. And so That's what I did. I started working in agencies, asked a ton of questions. The owners got sick of me asking a bunch of questions, so they would tell me to go meet with the client. I actually came up through the creative side. I became a creative director and then ran a branch of an Omnicom agency, and always found it fascinating to understand from a business perspective, what's the goal? What are we trying to achieve? How do we know that we've done what we need to do? How do we get paid? And so I would literally go meet with the clients, put on my suit, and then I would come back and take off my suit and tie and then meet with the creative team. And that gave me a unique perspective on how things work behind the scenes, which is not unlike the backstage getting ready for a show and then coming out on stage and having the audience suspend their disbelief that, these are just a bunch of tricks. And yeah, so I've been with Thrive Agency, gosh, 5.5 years, and have gone from working in their strategy department. I believe if you have a bad strategy, you're going to end up somewhere very expensive and somewhere that you don't want to be. And then led all the teams that were doing the work. We have about 200 employees. And so I was responsible for the 120 that actually did all the work. And basically right now I want to go out and help people navigate this crazy world of AI that we're in. What do we throw away? What do we keep? Who's telling the truth and who's selling snake oil? And so that's a quick flyby. I know that was a lot, but maybe that'll give us some meat to chew on during this episode.
So I have to tell you, I feel like in order to be authentic with you, I have to share a couple of things. I'm truly a magic nerd in my teens, and I can't say that I ever. I did do a couple of paid for shows, but it never became what you became. But it was an absolutely all encompassing endeavor for me for a period of time.
Yeah.
And that whole concept of directing and misdirecting attention and recognizing or learning this is how we perceive the world, and how do you take that perception and use it to create these illusions. And it's one of the reasons why young children are so hard to fool, because they don't have those perceptions yet. So
Right.
I've carried through with me for forever. Just so I've become a continuous student of the direction of human attention, so to speak. So that's great. That's just fantastic to hear. But I'm not going to digress, because we could easily. I just find that whole world
Yeah.
very fascinating. What do When it comes to this world of grabbing attention, directing attention in the world of internet marketing, that world has changed so much, and it's changing rapidly even today with the advent of AI. Um, what are some of the most common, maybe, misconceptions that you have to, talk your clients or others through to help them understand how the world is really working versus how they might think that it's working?
Yeah, we get into the conversations daily. We have about 1,000 active clients. And so anywhere from mom and pops to enterprise organizations to franchise groups with multi-locations. But I would say if there was one consistent um, point of confusion or discussion, it's around what exactly is AI and how do we move cautiously in a direction and be able to understand the ROI associated with that. And that's a huge topic, and that's probably more than we can dig into, but we can hit some of the highlights related to that. I think, because we've been around for 20 years, we've seen just about every shift and algorithm update that Google has thrown out there. And
Mhm.
there's no playbook for Google, right? That's just experimentation. Here's what works and here's what doesn't work. And a bunch of really smart people have figured out what needs to happen. And so there's probably over 200 indicators to Google as to whether somebody deserves that first page, or we call it the 10 blue links, right? And so a SERP, or a search engine results page, is the mindset that we've all been
Yeah.
immersed in for a long time. But that's not really where AI gets its information or how it treats things. And so We still meet with clients who've never heard of ChatGPT. We have other folks that are very immersed, and maybe they've gotten some bad information, and maybe they've been burned and they're a little bit skeptical. And so you have the business owner who is trying to self-educate while running a business. You have executive teams who are trying to navigate, what do we do if you're creating content? You know, what's the right
Mhm.
way to do it? If you're trying to get noticed on social media, well, it's suddenly become a flood of AI generated content. I know you've talked about that in the past. And then as a leader, you have to figure out, what is the adoption rate of your team, and who is pushing it and who is rejecting it and who is doing it the wrong way and who is doing it the right way. And so there's all these separate conversations and stakeholders involved, but just from a pure aspect of, that's great. What do I do to get attention to my business? We've seen traffic to websites for a lot of our clients fall off a cliff, and
I
they're
believe it.
freaking out, like, what in the world is going on?
Mhm.
And that's a shift in the way that businesses are discovered through these AI models. And there's a couple of different things going on, but that's a big overview. And I don't know if you've noticed some of those same conversations that are going on related to teams and leadership and business ownership and ROI. And yeah, it's just a lot. I don't think I've ever seen. I mean, you and I were around when the whole desktop publishing thing came about, and that changed a bunch of things, but this has been way more, um, a bigger tidal wave, let's put it that
Yeah,
way.
and it's so much more than keywords now. It's
Yep.
so mu and I would add to all of the dynamics that you just described. You now have employees who are being expected to learn these tools that might actually um, have a negative impact on their own careers. I had one of my direct reports last week came to me because we've been looking at actively leveraging tools like ChatGPT, Claude, et cetera,
Yep.
to develop training content for our clients, but to make sure it's discerning content. Um, what I've said to my team is, I don't want to just create vanilla training. There's no point to that. We want to create something that deserves to be out in the world, but we can still leverage AI to do some of the groundwork for us and maybe even some of the insight generation for us. But it still needs us. If we're going to create truly insightful new models, it still needs us. This employee came to me and he said, I totally buy the logic, but it feels a little like I'm sleeping with the enemy. Like what you're saying is master all of this because, but at the same time, the smarter I get, the smarter it gets. And I feel like there's going to come a point in time where it can do all of this. And so we had a good conversation. And ultimately, where we came down to is both things are true or can be true. You can take it to the nth degree of cynicism and negativity and worry. You can take it all the way to Skynet. You can take it all that far. And yet, the logical part of you should say, well, that doesn't mean I can just ignore it or avoid it. I can't. I can't avoid it. In fact, I have to immerse myself in it. The person who's going to battle Skynet is going to have to be the Reese character who understands Skynet, who understands all the ins and outs. That's how you will defeat it, not by pretending it doesn't exist. So I'm sorry, I just used a bunch of movie references that may go over the heads of some people. Sorry about that. But in um, but there is a sense of, do I really have to master this? Because it's not as easy as it used to be. I go back to, my first study of internet marketing, and it seemed very logical to me as an engineer. It just seemed like, okay, I get this. It's keywords, it's structuring information. Search engine optimization had a logic for me that I locked into. But AI optimization, I'm sorry, I'm still struggling with. So what do you have to do And then as AI evolves so rapidly, each of these new tools, the best advice someone gave me recently, because I was an, I wouldn't say I was an early adopter. I was an early trier of
Mm.
AI. And he said, look, if you tried ChatGPT a year and a half ago, you have got to come back and try today's ChatGPT, today's Claude, today's tools. He said, and don't get caught up in what you think it is, because it continues to evolve. I don't know. Does that prompt any thoughts from you?
Yeah, and as you were going through that, I was thinking about, I do a lot of writing on this to try to help educate, and um, obviously within our organization, we're trying to do training. You had mentioned training. There's really four archetypes that I've been able to describe as far as the continuum of where people are. I mentioned desktop publishing before. I had colleagues who were resistors, and basically they were out of a job because that was the way the world was going, right? And
Mhm.
so the folks that are thriving are the architects, and they're the ones that consider AI a design problem. They're getting into using agents, and they are not having it take over their thinking. They're building workflows. The next group is the integrators, and they're succeeding. And so they're trying to figure out how to bring those into their existing workflow. They haven't really reimagined how it's going to look like the architect. And it doesn't mean that if you're in one place, you can't graduate to the next one, but these are
Mhm.
just some of the stages. The resistors are the ones that are struggling. They're still doing things the old way. They have their processes that they're used to. They're sort of getting outpaced by the integrators and the architects, and there are conversations that are happening in organizations with those resistors. And then probably the most dangerous one is the over-automator, and they are just throwing everything at AI. Their productivity is up, the quality is down. They're very excited, and what we've found is a leader is going to fall into one of those camps, and they can be one of those, but what actually ends up happening is they're modeling that for the rest of the organization or the team that they're leading. And so, if you're listening or watching, you might just sort of think through, am I an architect, an integrator, or a resistor, or an over automator? And figure out if you're okay with where you are. And if you're not, maybe there's some things that you can do. There's a lot of free trainings out there. Some are good, some are bad. You had mentioned the fact that you wanted to put training out there that was meaningful and wasn't just vanilla. And
Yeah.
so I think that's one of the things that we're seeing in whatever industry or role you're in. It's kind of fun to put something into one of these tools and to get some feedback. And I'll talk a little bit about the technical, like what actually is going on behind the scenes. I think from my magic background, I have to know functionally how something works so that I can fool the audience, right? The
Yeah.
trick is when you go see a magician, you're getting fooled, and we're an honest liar. I'm going to fool you, and then I fool you. The problem is we've seen hallucinations, we've seen false information come back from some of these large language models. You mentioned a few of them. What's actually happening is no matter how smart they get, they're still very accurate predictors or mind readers that are simply looking at the probability of the next word in the result. And they're saying, based on statistical models, what word should I present next? And so every request is divided up into what's called a token. And that token is then looked at across its knowledge base, and it's weighted. And so is the word hare what's on top of my head, or is it a rabbit that's running through the forest? And so it has to look at what is the most logical next step. It'll take some chances because it's trying to learn that model, right? And
Mhm.
learn what it should do, but that's all it's doing. It's it doesn't have empathy. It doesn't know the scars and the struggles that you've been through in your life. It doesn't know the champagne toast with the wins that you know, had when you had success. I don't think it's ever, and I'm not a futurist, but that's the human element that is missing from a lot of the stuff that's out there. And so Google had an acronym back in 2016 that they used to present the best result for a search query called EAT. It was experience, authority, and trustworthiness. And so they've actually updated that model to EEAT. So it's experience, expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. And if it doesn't hit on one or more of those, it becomes that vanilla content, right?
Mhm.
Well, interestingly enough, these LLMs or large language models that we've talked about, Perplexity, Grok, ChatGPT, Claude, um, they have picked up on that and they are analyzing what has the components of that EEAT, right? And that is going to determine whether you are, and the word is cited, if you trigger the thumbs up from those large language models to be included in their knowledge base to then be referenced. And I know we're kind of getting a little bit down into the engineering weeds here, but it's important to understand where they get their information from. Um, Everybody's probably heard about Reddit being one of the number one areas of citations that these large language models scrape.
Mhm.
That's expanding. It kind of fluctuates. YouTube is a place that they will scrape the transcripts from that. Um, if you don't have any customer reviews, it's probably time to get on that because that hits that trustworthiness, right? Trigger. And then the other thing that we're seeing is large language models love people. They don't like companies so much. Why is that? Because
Interesting.
a company is made up of a bunch of people, but inherently a company doesn't have authority or experience or expertise. A person does. And
Mhm.
so if you have a blog on your website that has no byline or author associated with it, go put that on there right now, because it wants to know who wrote that. What is their experience? Are they credible in that area of expertise? Um, and so there's a couple of acronyms, and I'll take a break in just a second so you can pull this apart, Dan. You may have heard the acronym GEO, which is Generative Engine Optimization, and that's for a
Mhm.
large language model. The other one is AEO, or Answer Engine Optimization, and that's all these devices that we have where you pick up your phone and you talk to it, Siri. You may have a Google device or an Alexa home device. Um, what's happening? People are asking questions. Um, it's not the same thing as typing in a query for a keyword search, right?
Mhm.
The typical keyword type of search in Google is 4 to 5 words. A typical prompt in a large language model is an average of 32 words. So it's more conversational. There's a lot involved in that. And so one of the hacks that folks can take away from this is if you don't have an FAQ section on your website, go put one on there. Figure out what are your customers or clients asking? What are the typical questions that people want to know
Mhm.
about? Um, and those are easy things for these large language models to pick up on. And so I know I threw a whole lot at us. We talked about, the archetypes. We talked about the EEAT model. We talked about, making sure that the person is forefront. And I think there are some things that leaders need to be aware of and need to be comfortable stepping out and being in conversations online, which can seriously benefit their organization.
So I have a question about actual usage by over-automators, and then maybe we'll go into how do we leverage the magic behind the screen, so to speak.
Yeah.
But um, what I'm experiencing in this world is several leaders who have definitely they have drunk the Kool-Aid. They are really thrilled with the magic of AI. And at a recent meeting, one of them said, we're getting some feedback from our internal folks that we're just too complicated to work with. We're harder to work with." And so he wanted to discuss that, but there weren't a lot of great ideas coming up. But in the following days, it just got onto my radar, and I noticed that the messages from him and these other leaders over the last 6 months, 9 months, if you look at the trend, their internal emails have gotten longer,
Mm.
more complicated. Um, we were doing a problem-solving session on Teams, and one of the senior leaders piped in with, "Hey, we need to make sure we pay attention to the following." And it was a list of 20 things. And I know this leader, and this leader, there's just no way this leader would think of 20 things. So I know what this person did was they went into ChatGPT. Hey, what are the factors we need to analyze when we're trying to solve this particular problem? And it overwhelmed the conversation. It was like, oh my God, okay, we have to think about these 20 things. And we've got so much overutilization happening right now that it is like, I would have loved it if that leader had, I suppose I wouldn't know this, had gone to whichever tool he or she wanted to use, had gotten a list of 20, and then had read through it and discerned themselves,
Yeah.
what are the 3 that we really need to solve for? If we solve for these 3, we'll probably solve for the rest. I think that's where a leader can actually lead. But I can imagine a lot of organizations are experiencing this over communication, over complexity, over usage, and it feels good. Man, if because it seems smart, sounds smart. But are you seeing that with your clients or others, where they've gotten so enthusiastic that the over usage is actually becoming a detriment now?
Yeah. I mean, so you brought up a couple of points. One is critical thinking, editing. The other is the wow factor of word count, right? And so if it's longer, it looks more important, kind of thing. We meet with clients who we talk about a website development and we ask if they need help with writing. Oh no, we've got that. And when it comes back, it's obviously AI generated. It basically says nothing. It has no differentiators as to why someone may want to work with them. We've lost the empathy for the customer. We have not put ourselves in their shoes to know what problem they need to solve. And we've become okay with um, safe information.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I try to do, I'm on LinkedIn a lot and I like to engage with folks and ask questions. And there's a lot of AI stuff on LinkedIn. And, one of the strategies on LinkedIn is to engage with a number of people. And you can go down the list and see the comments that are obviously AI generated. They have very little to do. And with the topic at hand, they're safe, but they don't add to that wonderful
Mhm.
friction of discussion, right? And so I think smart people love pushback and they love to be challenged on things in a respectful way. And so my goal is I want to make the person laugh. I want to be a little bit snarky and sarcastic and have some humor associated with it. So it breaks that pattern. And I think what we're seeing type of content and have slowed down, like you said, and put a little more thought into it, it sort of shines a spotlight and it's refreshing. And you will leapfrog folks who are just okay with what we're seeing be the predominant way in which we communicate. So,
Now I feel like I'm going to give away some of my secret sauce. I've been holding this, but I decided quite some time ago, as I was thinking and writing about cognitive overload and this sense that we're swimming in data and stories and information. So I said to myself, because years ago I used to write at least one good rich article on LinkedIn every week, and it was like thoroughly
mm,
researched, thoughtfully written. um, and I began seeing less and less traction with those articles, and even blog posts or other internet posts, long form. Long forms does definitely work in podcasting. I'm not sure. Maybe you can help answer this. I don't know. Does long form work for blog posts if it's particularly thoughtful. I guess I don't know. My point is, and then I'll come back to asking that question.
Mhm.
I decided, and I actually had a Post-it note to myself where I just said, find ways to say insightful things in a sentence or two at the most, and then just post that sentence. Now that's hard. That is hard. You have to think through, what am I really trying to say? And then what's the either clever or snarky or just interesting way to say it in a way that only you can say it. So, say only what you can say in a way that only you would say it, and do it briefly. That's hard. And so I post less, but I get more traction with what I do post. And I have a series of LinkedIn authors that I have always really liked. I've liked their posts, but I noticed, it was sometime last year, I noticed their posts are getting longer. And frankly, I just don't want, if I click on like a LinkedIn link where you see the first two sentences maybe, and then an interesting photo that grabs your attention. And if I click on the more button, if I click on more, and what opens up is a long thing, I just lose my interest. I don't want, and maybe it's my own cognitive overload. I just don't want to, no matter how good the opening was, I don't want to spend the next 5 minutes reading that thing. There's an online, there's an online, it's not really a company, there's a project. It's called the Corporate Haiku Project. And the entire focus is to create funny, interesting haikus that say things. It's like the Dilbert of haikus, or Dilbert haiku-ized. And I find that great. I mean, every week I go to that site, because it's the structure of haiku has to be very brief. You read it, and maybe it's funny, maybe it's not. But I just don't know how much people are going to get from their long form blogs or anything else. But you tell me, is long form blog posting still a viable way to get the attention of AI?
Yeah, so that's a loaded question, and it all comes down to, what are you trying to do? And there's certainly a human audience, and then there's a robot audience. And so when you look at these social platforms, and we'll stick with LinkedIn, that's the one we're on right now discussing, there's a 3,000 character limit for a post. Typically the ones in that 2,000 to 3,000 with 14 paragraphs are the ones that get the most impressions.
Okay.
Why is that? Well, there's a thing called dwell time. And so if it takes you a while to read through that, the algorithm triggers to say, this is interesting to people, right? There's also character limits on the first line and the second line, 65 on the first, 45 on the second, before you get to that more button. And so that's part of that stopping the scroll. And so if you can craft that hook so that it interests people, then you have a better chance of the algorithm spinning that up. But then to your experience with the cognitive, load that you're dealing with, what is the investment required to go through the click the more and then go down and see that? And so I've been testing out various links. I actually ended up deciding last year I would post a video every day, Monday through Friday, on LinkedIn. The problem was LinkedIn is not pushing videos and doesn't treat videos the way they should. And so I switched to written form. And so the highest performing things on LinkedIn are things with an image, infographics and carousels. Carousels outweigh an infographic by a little bit. Why is that? Well, also because it's pages of shorter information, and it also increases that dwell time. And so again, I didn't want to just be in the mix of doing it the way everybody else was doing. So when I started posting carousels, I would put a dad joke at the end, the last panel of the carousel, really for my own entertainment, but also to see if anybody would click through to the last panel. And what ended up happening was people would respond back and they would say, oh, I'm so glad you did a carousel. The first thing I did was jump to the dad joke. And so there was some value that they were getting about the dad joke.
Uh-huh.
And so, as you think through these things, you go, how can you make your audience sticky? How can they get to know you as a personality? Like, these are the things that cause you to gain an audience. And, you have a pretty substantial following on LinkedIn. And so you've obviously done a number of things correctly. When we talk about blog post and length, and we go back to that EEAT acronym, the best advice I can give is go an inch wide and a mile deep, because that actually indicates the expertise factor. And so it's not the breadth of your footprint. You should pick
Mhm.
3 to 5 things that you talk about from different points of view all the time. Don't talk about 100 different things. You cannot, there's no coherence to 100 different things, but there is coherence to 3 to 5 things. And so there is something called pillar content, where you have a main article and then you have supporting articles that are underneath that article that break things out. But each of those pillars is related to one key topic:
Mhm.
the inclusion of photography, the inclusion of videos, the attribution or the byline of who is that author, quotes within the organization, very answer or question answer format, because that'll be picked up. And so I write a 3,000 word blog every month for our website. It's attributed to me. And then I'll do a 16-minute YouTube video. And so the pillar content is that blog post. I then record a 16-minute video, and then I slice and dice that and share that on social. I have shorts. And so it's not like you have to be this, 24/7 content creator, but you need to be thinking about the distribution. What is it that you want to accomplish? How can you express your opinions in a platform? And
Mhm.
then I also have a 7-day AI instructional email course that there's all sorts of different ways. Some people want to read, some people want to watch, some people want to go through a course. And so you have to figure out what's right for you, what can you commit to. And yeah, so hopefully that answered the questions that you had.
I will tell you, for certain people, myself included, what you just shared is gold. It's so fantastic. Let me ask you. So on LinkedIn now, do you do a daily carousel, or do you do that once a week, or do you have like a standard cadence to put out a carousel with a dad joke?
So I have shifted to infographics. I think it came from my design background that I liked designing a page. It's easy to digest, it's easy to share. Someone can print it out, they can stick it on the
Mhm.
wall. So I've been doing an infographic every day almost for the last 10 months. And again, there's a lot of noise out there. Impressions are down
Yeah.
65%. It's easy to get discouraged. But again, these come from that pillar content. And so if I write an article or a blog that's 3,000 words, and then I translate that, and usually my posts are around, 3,000 characters. Usually my posts are in that 150 to 200
Mhm.
word category. So it's not filling up the entire 3,000 characters. And I try to be respectful, because I listen to podcasts on 2x speed, because I just want the information as quickly as possible.
Sure.
And so um, I can lay out a month's worth of content and it not be dialed in, or um, it not just be fluff. I want it to be engaging. But I have about 3 to 5 things that I talk about, and I look at it from every single angle. And um, I didn't write anything until about 2 years ago, and I was like, I just can't add to this noise. I can't do it. But the difference that it will make, the visibility for your personal brand, the attention to the organization, is huge. I have gotten board positions. I have been involved in webinars. I've had speaking gigs from posting online. Um, I was on a podcast, and then they interviewed me for a research paper. And now the person contacted me and said that they want me to co-present with them at a huge conference with 13,000 attendees. And I'm like, going, what? Why do you want me? Because I was willing to get out there and have an opinion and not settle for the fluff that is being put out. And is it fun? Yeah, it's fun. Is it a gruel sometimes? Absolutely. But then you have to go, well, why am I doing this? Because I believe there's a lot of misinformation out there, and it's my responsibility to share what I know so that people don't get burned or don't follow a path that is going to send them somewhere they don't want to be.
Man, you said it's like you're triggering so many thoughts, and I'm trying to. I'm making little notes to myself because okay, I'm gonna come back to this thought, but because I have to back up to dad jokes. Not that you need to know this, but there is some actual research that validates the interpersonal value of dad jokes. And I don't know how valid this research is. It was an article that I read. So in the human dynamic of a typical human family, the males tend to be somewhat ominous figures to the family. They're bigger. They have more power, not just physically, but with testosterone and other male hormones. They just tend to be a bit more ominous. Like imagine a herd of or a group of gorillas. The silverback can be very imposing.
Oh yeah.
What that will cause within a human dynamic is it causes the young ones to avoid the male. It even causes the female to avoid the male until a need arises. However, with dad jokes, because the typical reaction to a dad joke is a bit of a groan, a bit of a like, oh, come on. And we laugh a little, we groan and we laugh, we roll our eyes. It actually serves to make this male figure a little less imposing, a little less frightening, a little more approachable. The willingness to make fun of the dad who's telling these dad jokes, it actually increases the approachability of the dominant male figure, which leads to better parenting, which leads to better relationships, leads to a number of common things. Now, this was an article in defense of dad jokes, and I got the feeling the writer was a definite user of dad jokes. So it might have been a self-validating article, but I have referenced it many times since reading it because I'm also a fan of dad jokes, particularly the unexpected dad joke, where it takes you a moment to realize, oh, grown. Yeah.
Well, there's a couple of things behind the dad joke whole path, and the reason why I chose that. Can I share that real quick?
Yeah, for sure.
So when I started at Thrive, my manager was probably 20 years my junior. And so I could have taken that and gone, this is crazy. Why am I in this position at this place in my career? But I knew the payoff was worth whatever the situation was.
Mm-hmm.
This person was very knowledgeable. We got along great. And so we have a behavior where we want to plan out our day and we want to send that to our manager and make sure that they're in agreement with what our plan is for the day. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put a dad joke in every update that I give. And so 300 days, I had a dad joke in my daily report. And I would say most of the managers said they never read their direct reports, but mine did every day. And the reason I got that was because I'm like, just as you said, I wanted to disarm this difference in age. I wanted to show that I have a sense of humor. And so then I thought, well, you know what? On LinkedIn, people rarely have a sense of humor. And so if I could be that guy, then maybe that'll give me a little bit of right to be snarky and funny. And I think humor is being lost. And the other thing that it did was I typically wanted that dad joke to have some relationship to something visual. And so I started playing around with a lot of these tools that create images. I'm a big fan of cartoons and animation from the 70s. And so it forced me to learn some of these tools. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to put a dad joke in there and I'm going to learn how to have these images show up. And Anyway, that was the background of it. And I would say if there's somebody out there listening, there's probably something that you are a little bit scared to put out there and you feel like it's a little bit risky. And, a dad joke, certainly there's some that are off color, but I was very careful in what I selected to make sure that it was okay for anybody who read it. Kind of the grandmother rule. If you be too afraid to tell it to your grandma, you probably shouldn't be telling it, especially on LinkedIn. And so, yeah, I think just thinking through content and how you communicate, there's a lot of lessons in humor, especially if you're in an industry that is maybe a little heavy. Humor can release that tension.
We have a sales team internally at our company, and one of my elements of sage advice to them, because I'm a content guy, I'm a training developer, I'm not really a salesperson, but I get on calls with clients or prospective clients, and then usually I have a sales rep accompanying me, and I just notice how serious they are. Maybe serious is the wrong word. Earnest. They're very earnest, and they earnestly want to walk the client through our value proposition and through the wheel of our services, and it's again very earnest. And I just, maybe it's my ADHD. I just get bored, and so I realized one of my ways of fighting that boredom is to have a bit of a banter with the client. And I want to know where they are geographically. I want to know their background. I go to their LinkedIn profile and see if I can find something in common, and then find something that we can talk lightheartedly about. And the way I said it to the sales team, I said, I take my work very seriously, but I don't take myself very seriously. And so let's smile a little more. Let's have a bit of fun. Now, that's dangerous. What I learned is some people have this gift of light touch humor, and some do not. And when someone doesn't have that gift, if they try too hard, it can be a little cringy, and not the good, like dad joke kind of cringy, but the actual kind of cringy. So I completely agree with you. But if someone is watching this and you're asking yourself, well, do I have that gift of lighthearted humor, light touch humor? Honestly, if you're asking that question, maybe the answer is no.
Right.
And so yourself, but I would encourage you, maybe you could develop that. Maybe you could build on that aspect of you, because you're right. It's something that AI, at least for now, can't easily duplicate. Maybe it is the most human part of humans, that ability to see around a corner and tell an unexpected joke, give an unexpected point of view. But you've got me thinking now about long form and how to leverage long form. And I love the idea of starting a month with a theme overall, like deciding, okay, what's going to be my theme for the month, and then writing a long form something, and then using that as my inspiration, and basically like having branches or vines that come off of that initial trunk for an entire week, and then ending with graphics, cartoons, drawings, carousels, whatever that might be.
I have a framework that might help, and it came from Magic with the 5 fingers. And so if people are having a hard time figuring out where to start, I can probably give you a year's worth of content on 5 fingers.
Wow. Okay.
So I'll start at the pinky, and I'm holding up my left hand for those of you who are listening. We all remember that pinky promise that we made on the playground, and you did not break that promise, right? And so what promise are you making? What can you stand behind as an organization? What promise are you making to your suppliers, if you have suppliers? What promise are you making to your employees? And what are you willing to stand behind to fulfill that promise? And if you're not making any promises, then you're probably going to lose out to people who are making promises or have some sort of risk reversal or guarantee. And so I've just given you about 10 different things on the pinky.
Yeah.
The ring finger, typically in many parts of the world, especially in Western society, that's where you wear your wedding band. My wife and I have been married for 20 years. I went into that relationship for the long haul. What is the relationship that you're going into with all of those people that I just mentioned? Your employees, your customers, your suppliers. But it didn't start with the marriage, right? There was a spark, there was some passion, there was some interaction. Respect the courtship. Don't ask to get married on the first date. What is the reason why you're in business? What are you trying to accomplish through the work in your organization? The middle finger. Now, again, for those of you listening, I'm not giving Dan the middle finger. I am holding up all my fingers and I'm just wiggling the middle finger. We often think of this as the vulgar finger, but it's actually a symbol of defiance, right? And so, who are you fighting against? Who is your villain? Who is the enemy of your brand? It can be an organization, it can be an ideology, it can be a process, it can be a number of different things. If you don't name your villain, then you can't get your team behind it. You can't have your customers be part of that, overcoming this villain. And I think a lot of people are scared to name the villain and then to be
Yeah.
respectfully divisive about why you're different. And so I would encourage people to identify their villain. The pointy finger has a lot of things. It can be number one, but it also can be pointing like that Uncle Sam poster, we want you. If you don't know who you're talking to, then you can't deal with any of those three fingers that came before it, right? So you got to identify who are you talking to. It's also a signal that we're number one. Do you want to be number one? What is it going to take to be number one? It's also a symbol for going up or things going in a good direction. When you point, that is also guiding you to a very focused path. So again, just giving you probably 10 more things to talk about just with the pointy finger. And then the thumb, that's the universal symbol for things are going well. What's going well? I mean, if you had a KPI dashboard that was just thumbs up and thumbs down, no wishy-washy in between, you would know if you're doing things right or you're doing things wrong. What should you be doing and what should you not be doing? And it's also, I have 3 sets of twins as nieces and nephews. They can't open each other's phones with the Face ID, but they can, they can open it with their Face ID, but they can't open it up with their thumbprint. That's unique. What thumbprint are you leaving on the world with whatever it is that you do? What thumbprint are you leaving on the employees that work with you, on your team, the suppliers, the customer that buys your product or service? And so if you get stuck, just look at one of your fingers and you can rotate through those and you'll have a wealth of things that you can do.
What comes through in all of these various like models and this guidance that you're giving is the amount of time you have spent over the decades, really thinking about this area. And when everybody, I want to, not necessarily everybody, but almost everybody wants to be a thought leader. But to be a thought leader, you have to have thought. I mean, and you have to have original thought. You have to have, insightful thought. And I just spoke with someone recently who wanted to be a thought leader, and his solution was to leverage ChatGPT to generate a whole bunch of thought leadership articles. And he wanted me to review some of the articles and just review his strategy. And honestly, I didn't even want to read through most of it because most of it was like perfectly fine, perfectly vanilla, perfectly reasonable, and I think unreasonable. But I don't need to read another article on like the vanilla approach to leadership. And I had to say to him, look, I get the sense that you need to spend some time yourself thinking about your thinking, like thinking about what do you think of this stuff. Don't just and don't just come up with another clever idea, a clever model. Like, what do you think? And we knew each other well enough because we go back several years that I could be fairly direct with him.
Yeah.
And I just said, look, I know you. You're smart. You are smart, and you've got a lot going on. But I don't know that you've thought enough about what you've got going on. You're just so intent on the output. Don't give over that part of yourself to Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini or Notebook LM. don't give away that part of yourself. And it was okay. I don't know where that's going to end up, because that's actually harder. And so what I appreciate so much about you, Jimmy, is the phrase "game recognizes game," meaning someone who plays a sport really well recognizes the difficulty of someone who's playing a sport. I recognize true thought leadership and the hardness underneath that. And I think, unfortunately, that's becoming more rare in today's world. So I can imagine many people who haven't put in the time, the effort into the actual thought leadership, which is internal. Kim Kardashian could take all of your advice. And I'm sorry. No, I mean, I don't really know Kim Kardashian, so it's not nice of me to mention a person, but she sort of represents banality. She sort of represents success without substance, maybe. So I'm sorry, apologies, but ask yourself, am I Kim Kardashian trying to leverage AI to become a thought leader? Maybe I should first become a thought leader, like go deep inside myself before then leveraging these tools to try to spread my thought leadership. And I know it's a little bit of a rant, and I promise not to do rants, but I do think sometimes we set people up, or they set themselves up for non-success. They do everything, but there's no foundational underpinning to all of the activity. So when you start with an 8,000 or 3,000, did you say word or character blog post?
Well, the blog post is 3,000 words. On LinkedIn, you're allowed 3,000 characters. So
yeah,
a little bit different there, but yeah, 3,000 words.
So, but that, that initial blog post, that is from which everything springs from for a month, leveraging your 5 fingers to generate that, if that's what someone is going to do. That initial element has to have some depth to it, some real thought to it. It can't just be ask ChatGPT, what's the latest thinking on topic X? Oh, what are the most interesting ideas on topic X? It'll generate content for you. It'll do a great job. And you may not even see how vanilla it is, because you don't see all the stuff that's out there. And I think we are going to, as we progress in this world, we're going to yearn for those unique thinkers. We're going to yearn for that dad joke, or that haiku, or that genuine human element that, I haven't seen it that way from anybody else. Something that says, this is a real person thinking through tough things and then helping me in some way think about things differently. I want to be respectful of your time. We're coming close to the end, Jimmy. And I will make sure, because I can definitely imagine that there'll be people who listen to this, who watch this, who want more information about your internet marketing agency, but also just about you. And in fact, I'm going to be one of them. I'm going back to LinkedIn, and I'm going to look for your dad jokes. So I will look for your archive of dad jokes on LinkedIn posts and carousels. Any, I guess, final thoughts you'd love to share? Because you've shared a lot. I really appreciate this. Any final thoughts you'd like as we wrap it up?
No, I appreciate the conversation. It's been fun. It's amazing how time flies when you're having a good time.
Yeah.
There was a theme throughout what I talked about, because I had a passion for magic since I was 4 years old, and I just shared 5 fingers that are all about the way I think about the world. And so I think when we get into this mode of sharing, we feel like we have to put on a performance that is not us. And so if anybody's waiting for permission to be themselves, like, Dan and I'll grant you permission to be yourselves. Like, if that's what you're waiting for, just be yourself, because that's what people want to know. And you've got a lot of experience and expertise and a point of view that's different than anybody else, right? And so just feel comfortable, try things out. And I remember the first time I posted online, I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so embarrassing. Nobody's listening. Nobody's watching. you've got plenty of time to figure out your voice. Just be an inspiration to somebody else, and your knowledge and experience can help somebody. You're best suited. I think Roy Vaden says it best. You're best suited to help the person you once were. And if that's all you do, then you're helping people out.
Do you remember there was a novel written, I think it was in the 70s, called Magic? It was about a ventriloquist.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm trying to remember the name of the author, but I read that book, and in that book, and this was in the midst of my passion for magic, the author describes mastering the one-handed card shuffle. And I decided I was going to master a one-handed card shuffle. And I spent months working on that to be able to shuffle a deck of cards with a single hand. And I have no reason for sharing that other than it just seems to fit the moment. And I'm going to have to go and find that author. The name William Gibson comes to mind, but I don't know that that is correct. But it was a great, scary book.
Now, William Gibson was a magician. He did write a comic series called The Shadow, so it could be. I remember Anthony Hopkins played the character in the movie.
Yeah, yes. And there was a really scary scene. I don't know if this is from the movie or the book, but it's in my mind of swimming in dark water, and there's a snapping turtle. So this is amazing. I have not had that thought in 30 years, 40 years, and now suddenly, bam! I remember this image created in my mind. So Jimmy, this is memorable. It's helpful. I will make sure in the show notes people are able to get to you and find out more about you. I'm sure you and I will not be strangers, and we will maintain this connection. And I really appreciate this. I think this is going to both literally help me help the podcast, but also help a lot of the podcast listeners. Thank you so much. And we'll talk again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dan. It's been a blast.